Hello and welcome to Trader Chat. It's our first Trader Chat post Cheltenham. What a week we had, particularly if you were back in Irish horses. But it wasn't actually that bad of a week for the layers. And I hope, like me, you were intrigued to find out how it actually went from the bookmaking side of it, because kind of mixed reports in terms of the results throughout the week. An awful lot of Irish winning, but some very, very key defeats as well in terms of accumulators and so on, anti-post kind of books and situations as Envoy, Len, Concertista, Ellie May, horses like that, maybe letting punters down. Shaq and Port Swat, to name another. I'm Johnny Ward. Flynn Goward is with me from Star Sports. Flynn, how are you after the week? I felt like I'd kind of aged a lot by Friday evening. I feel like I've aged a lot more now. It was a long week and a lot of racing. How did the firm fare?
Well, for the first 3 days, it was really, really difficult. We found it really, really tough. We thought that we kind of got away with it on day one. We'll spin through each race individually shortly, but with day one, we did think that we did get away with it. We were just down at the end of day one, but when you kind of spin through the results, I mean, we should have been further down than we actually were. Day two, we were well and truly floored. We were completely on the canvas after day two. It was our worst day of the whole meeting. On day three, we were down again, but that was mainly due to the handicaps rather than the actual graded races themselves. And then we kind of staged a bit of a fight back on day four, and we managed to actually just finish up on the week after day four. So it was a good week all in all, but for a lot of the week, we thought it was going to be really, really difficult. Like you just spoke about, there are a lot of multiple busters. So Envoy Len going down, Concertista going down. They were really big results for us. And in terms of the actual individual books, they weren't as good as we'd hoped they'd be. We'll spin through them individually in just a moment. But in terms of the multiple busters, they were really, really important for us.
Yeah, so if you cast your mind back to this day last week, I was saying that I was going to back Ireland in the handicap, which the Press Cup handicap was 6.5. And Luke Tarr had been on to me last week saying, all we're doing here in this handicap is laying GB, such that GB had obviously been back from whatever it was, like even money or thereabouts into 1-2, because obviously Ireland had gone so much bigger. But you're explaining to me that this was actually this was quite a logic-based gamble on Britain. That I got a guy in the industry to price up what he felt based on the odds was a true price for Ireland winning the Prestwick Cup, and he reckoned it was give or take 11-8. So when I was backing it at 13-8, it wasn't like I was getting a massive rake. And that was kind of the logic that maybe the guys who were backing with Star Sports last week had, that actually the figures suggested it would be fairly close to a British win, or closer to the handicap maybe than I thought anyway.
Yeah, so we obviously started with GB in the handicap, obviously +6. We had +6 the tie, and then Ireland -6. And we started with GB +6 at even money. They were favourites, and we had Ireland at 6-5, and the tie was 8-1. But we saw loads of money for GB at even money. And then so we'd go 10-11, more money. We'd go 4-5, more money. We'd go even shorter. And it was the same accounts coming on. So they were taking even money. Then they were taking the 10-11. Then they were taking the 4-5. So
you're happy enough to lay them again then?
Yeah, of course. I mean, if we're cutting the price, that price is then available again, so they can take that price. If we're knocking back a certain type of bet and we're not cutting the price, then that's not really on, in my opinion. We should be cutting that price. So even though we are laying a shorter price, that's fine to be laying.
I think that could even be the future of gambling to an extent, where if you are laying a bet to a customer, he or she might want to back it again at a shorter price, and the firm will take that, because they know over time, like, the risk is kind of a lot less, and it's kind of fair. And if you respect the punter, you'll probably cut the price again.
Yeah, and that tells you that they're not completely guessing, these punters. I mean, if you're taking even money and then we're cutting the price to 4-5 and you're still taking 4-5, you're telling me as a trader that 4-5 is too big still. Because you were willing to bet it even, so now you're willing to take 1.8. So we've kept cutting them, and then we ended up laying, obviously yourself, Ireland -6 at about 13-8, I think it was. We did lay as big as 7-4 that was out there. So the book in the end wasn't actually too bad. We had GB as losers in the book. We had Ireland as slight winners, and we had the tie to kind of cop most of it. So Ireland actually obviously going winning by up-teen amount of winners. Wasn't a bad result in that book whatsoever for the handicap. But it was a really interesting market, and we actually saw a lot of activity on it. Just in terms of other specials that we had on the week that's probably worth talking about, we had the shortest SP of the festival, so it was between 5 horses. Off the top of my head, it was Shishkin, Monkfish, Shakan Poursoir, Concertista and Envoy Len. Those were the 5. We saw loads of money for Monkfish. We opened up Monkfish at 7-4, Shortening's 13-8, went evens, went 4-5. And then the news about Nurkamine being a non-runner came out. And that kind of shook things up completely because Shishkin would then go much shorter. People thought that Shishkin was going to go after shortest, but then there's obviously the others that went off much shorter, and Monkfish going off a solid 4s on meant that the punters got the money there. So we got the money in the Presbyterian Cup handicap market, and the punters got the money in the Shorties SP market. In terms of the total cumulative winning distance, which day will have the highest, it was Tuesday by quite some margin. Shishkin being a wide margin winner and Appreciator kind of kicking things off there on the Tuesday meant that was the winner. We actually laid the Tuesday, so punters were already in the money after day one pretty much when they saw those long distance results go in.
Right, and let's talk about Tuesday then now, because that does seem like a long, long time ago, more than 6 days ago anyway. And Appreciated kind of set the ball rolling with that ridiculously easy victory in the first. And there were some incredibly long distance victories by, grade 1 horses over the week.
Yeah, there certainly was, and they all seem to be Irish. Unfortunately for us over here, I'm sure we'll get onto the GB Island debate a little bit later, Johnny. But in terms of Appreciate, it got us off to a terrible start. We laid 120 grand at 5-6, and then there were plenty of, I say, smaller bets, still decent sized bets, but not quite to that ilk. 85% of the business was for the favourite, so the multiples were started off for punters. The singles and the balances started to rise after about 125. In the punters' accounts, as Appreciate got them off to an absolute flyer in the Supreme. So
what do you do there then? At what point does Star start saying, well, we need to hedge our bets here a little bit? Because I mean, you can't just have a complete 1-horse book on a well fancied William Mullins favourite. So how does the firm deal with something like that? Because you don't want colossal liabilities on an individual horse, I presume.
Well, we do. We don't
right.
hedge. Very, very well known that we don't hedge. A lot of people don't believe it, but I can tell you, I obviously trade these races. We don't hedge. So we did have Appreciated as a huge liability. And as you'll find out when we go further into the conversation about some of these other races where we have laid big bets, it's obviously not just from one person. We have these stacking up with lots and lots of different bets, although the really big bets do kind of dwarf that. We do just have them for huge liabilities. We're saying if I'm happy that we've laid a good price, if we've laid it for X amount or a smaller amount, it's still a good price to lay, and that would be very much Ben's ethos. As long as it's all in the price. If you're laying a good price and you're laying it on the show, then you're absolutely fine. We have a minimum lay to lose guarantee of 100 grand on the show at Cheltenham. For normal races on your average Monday or Tuesday, it'd be 10 grand on the show, which I think is more than fair. But for Cheltenham, it's 100 grand. So we do seem to have these kind of favourites when we do lay the big bets, and when they are really, really popular with the majority of punters. Like I say here, Appreciate it, 85% of the business for the favourite. That is how the book will stand, and we don't hedge at all. So we will have Appreciate it for a couple hundred grand or a few hundred grand, however much it was.
Now I can see why Monday was a bad day for you.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been much worse. I think when we go on to the Arkle, Shishkin actually ended up being a winner in the Arkle because we laid 3 against the field really heavily. We laid All Mankind, Franco de Port, and Eldorado Allen. So even though Shishkin was the kind of hot pot in that race, he wasn't the one that the punters came for, and he actually ended up being a winner. So even though he was short price, it was actually a decent result for us there. Moving on to the Ultima, pretty good.
Just to briefly intro, isn't that absolutely bizarre? I mean, Shishkin, to my mind, I could make any amount of excuses for people who wanted to lay Appreciated in the sense that he didn't beat Ballyadam by that far. He'd been beaten at Cheltenham last year, so on and so forth. There were a couple of angles in the race where you could say we didn't really know how good the British horses were. There were reasons you could see Appreciated beaten, yet he's a terrible, terrible, terrible result for the firm. Shishkin, for me, he looked absolutely bomb-proof come the off because the main rival was gone. The race was pretty much going to be set up for him. He doesn't do anything wrong at Cheltenham. He jumps grade, maybe slightly out to his right. Couldn't see why he would be beaten at that stage, yet he's a winner for Star Sports. So that's kind of how the variabilities of this mad game that we're in.
It's just the way the money comes in. I mean, we are still the prices up, and however the punters come in kind of shapes our books. So it's just the way it ended up in terms of the Arkle. I'm not complaining too much at all, Johnny, to be honest with you. Talking about the Ultimate just very quickly, Happy Go Lucky was the most popular result there, but we were absolutely fine in terms of the result in that race, but albeit kind of smaller stuff. Honeysuckle was probably the most popular of the day. But we actually ended up laying 100 grand on Epperton at 4-1, as well as a chunk each way on James de Burley. So getting those, yeah. So getting those two beat was a really good result for us, even though in terms of the actual weight of punters' money, in terms of numbers, it was more on Honeysuckle. So loads of money for Honeysuckle. So Honeysuckle would have been one of the worst winners in the book, but still a winner, more importantly. It was still building up in those multiples, which we'll get onto now as we talk about the Mares Hurdle. So Concertista getting beat here was really, really good for us in terms of the multiples going down. We also laid 120 grand each way on Roxana at 11-4. Wasn't the nicest each way bet in the world to lay. Obviously with the shape of the market, so that getting placed gave us a little bit back there. But Black Tears would have been a fantastic result there, and then obviously the small cop on the each way part of the Roxana bet. So
you weren't doing that many in terms of specials. It was a more conventional kind of each way book for Star Sports compared to a lot of firms like going 7 places in races, and it was all mad across the board, really.
Yeah, I mean, when we're laying these size of bets, and we'll advertise that we will lay a fair bet, we don't need to go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 places. It's not kind of our style. If you're coming to us, then you will get a fair bet. You're not going to be kind of knocked back to any amount on Cheltenham, really. So if you're going to come and have a fair bet of us, we won't kind of offer those extra places. That's just our business model when it comes to these type of races.
Just on that, and this is something that has crept in with some of the high street firms, and it's kind of almost gone unnoticed, where they've come up with their own each way terms now, which is all well and good as a bonus, but like you're not actually laying the stated, 5th, 1, 2, 3 or whatever it is. Now you've gone a 5th. Or you've gone an extra place, but you've gone a 5th instead of a quarter and all this, and you don't really have the option anymore. And I think this is why there needs to be a bit more regulation in terms of what's going on here, because like the old style now is kind of just been, the bookmakers are kind of moving away because they know they're actually getting slightly better margins on the place market at times.
Yeah, and the actual prices in the book will reflect the each way term. So if you see a firm going 8 places, they'll be much shorter the horses. Same way when you see a golf book, when someone's going 10 places compared to 7, their prices will reflect that. So we were going conventional place terms, but then we were kind of not top prizes, but we were very, very generous in terms of the margins that we were putting out. That's kind of our model if we're going to lay a fair bet anyway. I mean, if we're laying 120 grand each way, Roxana, we're not going to go 4 places. It would be absolutely silly. So moving on to the penultimate race, that would be the Boodles. We had an 80-1 winner there. Was a good result for us, albeit kind of smaller stuff, but a real good spread of business in the Boodles, which led us on to the last race where Ascaria 10 was a terrible result in the National Hunt Chase, but thank God he got beat. So Galvin going and winning the race wasn't a huge amount better than Ascaria 10, but it was the lesser of two evils, and it made it a small losing day on day one. So even though you had Honeysuckle go in, Appreciate It, Shishkin, Galvin, who was kind of well supported towards the off in the last race, we actually managed to have just a small losing day. So we felt like we kind of got away with it by the skin of our teeth on day one, Johnny.
Yeah, I remember going into the Star Sports group and saying, how are you getting on? And the word was, we've gotten away with murder. I think that might have been on day 2, though, was it? So day 2 was bad, but it could have been worse. Or actually, maybe it was Concertista that got you away with murder, but day 2 wasn't good anyway.
No. Day 2 is absolutely shocking, and I think that's just headed by Bob Ollinger. Everybody wanted to be on Bob Ollinger. It was one of those that I just wanted to get beat because everyone in the world fancied it. Nobody didn't tip up Bob Ollinger. I was just like, just please, something come and get this one beat. It was the worst result of the week by far. We laid 350 grand at 7-4, so a huge bet that we laid here on Bob Ollinger. That was kind of well publicised in Simon Knott's blogs after racing, which meant that we were over £600,000 behind before the first race on the Tuesday. So it was always going to be a long way back for us. We'd have to get a good few big ones beat. But in terms of the amount of punters that are on for Bob Ollinger, honestly, I can't tell you. It was just the bet ticker here on my right hand side was just full of Bob Ollinger. I couldn't see anything else. So a really bad result for us, and a fantastic ride and a fantastic horse. On the next race, so lots of lumpy bets on Monkfish, and we also laid a bit each way for Fiddler on the Roof, which obviously came second, and they would have won too. So fair play to the punters on Fiddler on the Roof. I could not see that one at all, but ridden really well to pick up the pieces. Botox Has was the one that shone up massively in the Coral Cup, but he came absolutely nowhere. He ran pretty poorly, and Heaven Help Us was a good result, as you would expect. Cheltenham Festival was the only loser in the book in the champion chase, but frustratingly, there was no real monster bet struck. It was in terms of big bets, we were looking at 20 grand, 30 grand, but there were no hundreds of thousands, which is always the way when you get a short one beat. You've never laid them to the amount that you want to.
There obviously was a slight doubt about him getting up the hill, I think, and that probably was in people's minds. I think so many people had said it maybe that, and it turned out to be pretty much true, that he just couldn't. He was that one favourite where you're like, I can make a case kind of for something going wrong here, and obviously maybe that's put people off having insanely big bets on him.
He seemed a little bit flat as well. I thought he was a little bit flat. He didn't show that real class. Obviously, put the kettle on was fantastic, going and winning the race, but to have Nuba Negra so close, and they were quite bunched at the finish. I thought first flow ran a really weird race. I thought he was going to be pulled up. I think first flow went 1,000 in running down the back, and then obviously touched about 20 turning in. It was a real peculiar run from him.
As did another horse at Cheltenham, but that horse who turned 20, touched 20, actually ended up winning well, of which we get to Mount Ida. Yeah, anyway.
I don't even want to talk about Mount Ida.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Mount Ida shortly.
Terrific. Tiger Roll in the cross country. I mean, what story, him coming back and doing the business on the better ground. He was fantastic. A real positive result for us. Easy's Land was the loser there, as you would expect. Sky Pirate was a good result in the Grand Annual for us, and then moving on to the last race, Kilcrut and Jackson Legend were the big losers for us there. We saw quite a bit for Kilcrut. We had 20 grand at 6 to 5, 5 grand 6 to 5, and then would you say it was a bad ride? Do you think?
I think it was a better ride than the winner. Put it that way. I think Paul Townend was probably in a situation coming into the straight. It's that difficult one where I'm in between a rock and a hard place here. I want to go after this horse. I know I'm going to make ground, but how early do I do it? And when is too late? I just think the winner is given far too soft of a time, but on a horse that would be a pacey horse by Jeremy. Kilcrut is probably might be more of a stamina laden horse. Travel Great picked up the piece at Leopardstown. Couldn't be more different here. This winner wasn't going to be coming back. So it's a question of when do you attack? And I think he should have been ridden more positively. I didn't have a bet in the race, but anyway.
Yeah, I thought Rachel was absolutely fantastic on Sir Gerhard there. I mean, with Kilcrut, I was surprised at how close he got, given the type of horse he is. Sir Gerhard might have been tying up towards the end, but I was just surprised at how close he actually got, which means he's just a great horse, isn't he? I think he's going to be really, really good over a hurdle next year. It does remind me of a bit of an appreciated type, not just because obviously the owner's colours, but does remind me of like a bit of a stayer. Like could go into the Ballymore next year. It wouldn't surprise you at all. But Sir Gerhard couldn't really get us out of trouble after day two. Even though we had lots of good results, when you look at the Coral Cup, when you look at the Champion Chase, when you look at the cross country, etc., the bumper, because we just got taken to the cleaners on the first race, there was no way back for us on day two, and it was 2-0 to the punters after that day, Johnny.
Day three.
Yeah, day three. So kicks off with Envoy Len. To start the business, nice and early. We laid 100 grand at 2 to 5. Envoy Len laid early in the morning. The favourite was losing over £500,000 in the book at the off, but then we laid Chantry House each way at 9 to 1. We laid 15-1-5 each way at 9 to 1, and then a further 15 win only as well on Chantry House. So Chantry House was actually a level result in the book, and Envoy Len was still the loser, even though laying those big bets. And then we also laid 60 grand Chantry House without the favourite at 100 to 30, so to lose 200. So was a level result in the book with Chantry House, with Envoy Len still being the loser. So we expected a fantastic result when Envoy Len got beat, but it was only an okay one in the end. It was really sad to see him actually fall in, even though obviously he's fine, etc. Jack Kennedy made some comments yesterday, didn't he, saying about he didn't feel right on him and stuff. It could just be after the event, but I'm not sure what your thoughts were on the run. I only jumped about 2 fences, but
there's a suggestion as well that he wasn't. It did affect him a bit that he had to move yards so quickly that and I'm basing this slightly on hearsay, but there is a rumor in Ireland that he wasn't quite as kind of relaxed going into Cheltenham as they might have expected him to be. And it's not that surprising when you're in a routine as well. I mean, it's nothing to do with Henry de Bromhead. Henry de Bromhead had a sensational week, but maybe if you move a kid from one school to the next, it might upset him. I don't know what happened, but he did give signs before the race. I mean, he drifted. The drift didn't make any sense. Like, this horse couldn't be beaten as long as he
It was really late, the drift as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was really late.
I backed him. I got sucked in. I backed him, and you're always disappointed when you back a drifter at odds on that's beaten, and then you're told, well, he was a little bit warm beforehand, or he was worked up. And I wasn't mad at the position Jack Kennedy put him in the race, but I think Jack Kennedy knew that he needed to relax him, and he was kind of again caught between a rock and a hard place. But I wouldn't be worrying about this horse. I can't wait to see him again. And again, actually, I'm glad that. I mean, it would have been. You remember Sir Eric? I mean, I was in the press room when Sir Eric died. It was a sickening feeling. And you can imagine, like, if a jockey, short of a jockey getting killed in action, like, that's the worst thing that can happen at Cheltenham. And it was horrific. That's like the mood in the press room just went to the floor. So I was just glad to see he got up and we lived to fight another day, because he's still possibly the most exciting horse in training, even though we've seen so many good performances at Cheltenham.
Yeah, I think even if he's not the best, he's definitely got that star factor, which the so-called best probably don't have. I mean, even though Minella Indo was obviously fantastic, he doesn't have that real star quality, whereas Envoy Land obviously does have that. So I can't wait to see him back on the track. Hopefully he doesn't win too many races at favourite anyway. The Boss's Oscar is the one to talk about in the Potemps. He was really, really popular. Everyone wanted to be on this horse. It really shortened up, went off about 7-2 in the end. But Mrs. Milner got us back to level on the day after the first race. We actually lost small on the first race, and then we got back to level after the Potemps.
The girl I know who makes hats, she asked me for a bet in the race, and I told her to back Milner as opposed to Mrs. Milner. So I was just watching the finish. It was like, oh my God, what have I done?
Typo.
Yeah.
Allaho was the second worst result in the book in the Ryanair, with Min being the worst. We laid a 10 grand at 4-1 Min early doors. Allaho wasn't a catastrophic result, but what a race that was, and what a ride. That RSA form from last year is really working out, isn't it, Johnny?
Yeah. Here was me fancying Champ in the Gold Cup.
I know. We shall come on to champion Nicky Henderson shortly. Getting onto the Stayers Hurdle, Paisley Park was the big loser here. Again, the short one, we laid 30 grand at 9-4 Paisley Park. Fury Road was the other loser. Was really well supported. Fury Road,
unbelievable gamble on him. Couldn't get my head around that. Yeah,
and then he did start to go the other way a little bit, didn't he? And Flooring Porter was pretty solid in the book, but not a huge amount of support. And he was obviously a runaway winner for Gavin Cromwell. So not a bad result for us there at all. And then we were going okay, and then it got to the handicaps, and this is where it really started to fall down for us on the Thursday, starting with the shunter. I mean, this was just horrible to watch, and really frustrating to watch for us. 20 grand at 5-2, 4 grand at 5-2, 12 grand at 11-4. It was just an absolute sickener. A Waver to see was also pretty popular in the race, but the shunter did the job for the 100 grand bonus. So fair play to Connections there. Although it was kind of frustrating to see from our end that we'd done the hard work in the graded races, then we become unstuck by a 5-2 favourite in the handicaps.
But like I'm very friendly with his owner, and they targeted the bonus and all that. But like he was discussing this, what race do you go for? Because he's adept over hurdles. He didn't have much experience over fences, and that betrayed him a bit at Leopardstown. You add in the fact that he'd won so recently at Kelso, an inexperienced rider riding in a race of that nature. I mean, I couldn't for the life of me make that horse any shorter than he was. I just couldn't. I mean, it's all well and good after the event. He bolts up, but you can't logistically say with logic, that he should have been much shorter than that. I mean, you have to lay a bet like that.
Yeah. I thought Farclad ran an absolutely fantastic race in behind as well. But even when Farclad came to him, the shunter just went again and probably could have won with another stone on his back, you'd say. So fair play to the shunter and Connections there, although not a good result for us in the handicap. Tell Me Something Girl left us being just in front, actually. So it was actually quite a good result, even though the Rachel Blackmore factor was in play there. Royal Kahala was by far the most popular in the Mares Novice, but Tell Me Something Girl left us just in front for the day. And then we're on to the beloved Mount Ida, Johnny. Yeah, horrific stuff. I mean, if I just said that the shunter was bad, I mean, this was even worse. Just watching this as a bookmaker, just tailed off, went 1,000 in running, I think it did, and then coming through to win. I mean, when it just came to travelling, you're just thinking, another Irish plotted horse here. That's what I was kind of thinking, having watched the shunter and then on to Mount Ida, probably recency bias and probably unfair of me to say, but as a bookmaker sitting there, you're thinking, oh, for goodness sake. We laid 10 grand at 9-2. That's probably the most notable bet of Mount Ida, but there was plenty of support for the favourite. Everybody wanted to be on. Like I say, went 1,000 in running, and meant it was another day for the punters, and we were 3-0 down, unfortunately.
Day 4.
Yeah, moving on to day 4, and this is where the fight back started. So we are going to end on
Redemption for the firm.
a good news story for us anyway, but not for the punters on day 4. To start the day, we laid 20 grand on Xana here at 5 to 4. It was laid early in the morning, that one. But then when we got to the off, it was all about the front two in the market. It was all about Xana here, and it was all about Quilixios. We laid 200 grand Xana here at 11 to 8, and then 100 grand Quilixios at 2 to 1. So Quilixios was the worst winner in the race, but we were just happy that the favourite didn't oblige and it didn't kind of hit us first race again.
Yeah, I was gutted with this race. I had my biggest bet of the week on Tritonic each way at the prices. I couldn't see how, I could not make sense of the price. Subsequently told Alan King was very, very sweet in him. Found absolutely nothing from 2 out. And the slowly run race, to me, shouldn't have suited Quilixios as much as he was prominent. Xana here was basically too keen and he wasn't going to win. He actually ran well, I think. But Tritonic was, I mean, he's plenty of flat pace, should have suited him perfectly, and he found absolutely nothing. And I told so many people, this is my bet of the week each way, can't get over the price. And I don't know, like, I mean, the market didn't like him, and maybe the market got it right, but like, was he that much behind David Pipe's horse? I don't know. So I'm not sure what to make of it. I was gutted after the race because I wasn't having a great week anyway, and I told a lot of people to back this, and he ran like that.
I think it's a race to nearly forget with the way it was run. I think there was money for Adagio just before the off as well, so that's interesting. With there being money for him, he was kind of not talked about all week, and then there was money for him on the day, kind of late on the day as well. That's when we know the real important money kind of comes nice and late when the markets are liquid, and he was going off a little bit shorter. So with him running well. And being well backed, there might be substance to that. But in terms of a race, I think Xana here probably is still the best horse. He was just far too keen, but you wouldn't trust him coming back to Cheltenham in future, really, when crowds are there, and he might even get a little bit more revved up. But it was a decent result for us in the end, just getting Xana here beat. That's all we needed. Like you just said, Tritonic was pretty friendless in the market. We didn't see a huge amount for the Alan King charge at all. So that was the triumph on day 4. Then moving on to net trades, Belfast Banter wasn't an amazing result. Actually, we lay quite a decent bet at 33 to 1 in the county. So even though an outsider won, it wasn't the best result for us. What was a good result though was Vanillier in the Albert Bar. It was a fantastic result. Statler and Torrygraph were the real popular ones there. So again, Vanillier going and winning the race was a great result going into the biggest race of the week, which was the Gold Cup. 42% of bets were for album photo, so a lot of support for album photo. Normally when you see around that type of percentage, you would expect a favourite to be around the even money, whereas he was about 5 to 2, 9 to 4. So a lot of bets for album photo going for his third Gold Cup. We laid 10 grand at 5 to 2 twice, 8 grand to win 20, so plenty of bets for album photo. And Manila Indo actually winning the race meant that we actually had a bit of a chance of a fight back, Johnny. So it was a real good result for us. One of our best results of the week there in the Gold Cup.
Happy to say a good bet on Manila Indo at Leopardstown when he last ran. So
really?
I probably wasn't the only one to desert him, to be fair. But it was to be fair, it was a great race to watch, and it was kind of if you were on him, you knew a long way out. Basically, Alfred wasn't going to outstay him, and there was an interesting moment coming around the bend to the second last where Rachel Blackmore tried to kind of hem in Paul Townend, and it wasn't talked about that much afterwards because it was kind of incidental to the result, but it was one of my moments of the week because it was like Rachel Blackmore's riding with so much confidence there. Paul Townend had a scatter of seconds at that stage as well, so it was kind of like you're trying to think of almost like the mental well-being of these two jockeys versus each other, where she had the confidence to kind of try to do a maneuver on him, which was perfectly fair, and it cost him ground. And you're like, if Album Photo finishes second here, this mightn't be great for Paul Townend. But as it turns out, it didn't matter to the result. I thought it was great race riding.
It kind of brought flashbacks back to me of when Best Mate won his third Gold Cup, and he was kept in.
I was thinking the same thing.
Pilot? I can't remember.
Pilot. You must have been a pup at that stage.
But I've seen plenty of replays of it. So I think Harbour Pilot kept him in, and it was Beef or Salmon at the front, and then and then he came there with that camera angle coming around the final.
It wasn't Beef or Salmon, I think, because Beef or Salmon. I don't think Beef or Salmon really got close. I can't remember the horse exactly. It was Harbour Pilot and Best Mate, but I don't think Beef or Salmon was involved.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But anyway.
it really did echo that kind of camera angle coming around the last minute of him being kept in, but then obviously best mate found something and got between the horses, and Albin Photo didn't. But either way, the Gold Cup was a fantastic result for us. But to be honest, most of the action that we saw on the Friday was on the next two races. So huge action in the Hunters Chase, which you really wouldn't expect. Billaway was hugely popular. We laid £200,000 on Billaway at 2-1. 200 grand.
I had a fraction of that on him.
And then we had 160 grand on Bob and Co at 9-2. So those were the two that we really, really needed to beat in the Hunter Chase. Paul Bay was by far our best result of the week so far. And it only took until three races from the end on day 4 to get there anyway, Johnny. But it was our best result of the week, and meant that we were just close to getting in front, which was amazing considering what we had been through on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So going into the Mayor's Chase, this was the biggest bet of the week that we'd laid. Ellie May, in terms of number of bets, was one of the most popular. Even though she drifted, she was being laid at 8-11, and then she was actually going off around the 5-4 mark. So even though she drifted, she was still hugely popular. We laid £380,000 on Ellie May at 5-4, and then 100 grand on Cole Reevy at 5-2. So those were the two against the field that we needed to beat. They were obviously the two that fought out the finish. But Cole Reevy going and getting the job done wasn't a bad result for us at all. It was actually a small winner in the book, obviously laying that huge sum on Ellie May. And then Ellie May being laid to a lot of other punters as well, and in multiples. So getting Ellie May and Cole Reevy out battling her up the hill was a fantastic result.
I've just been paid by Star Sports at this stage. They paid me out on the Press Free Cup, so I reinvested some of it in Ellie May. I wasn't happy with the ride, to be honest. I think I don't really know why Mark Walsh went to the right of a horse who was jumping right, and it was also going hard for a long way out. The two of them, it was a brilliant race to watch, but you'd have to question it, because Ellie May could, I presume, I'm just taking a lead up her inner and taking her time, but far be it for me to criticise Mark Walsh, but I did my money anyway, and I promptly withdrew, lest I give any more back to Star Sports. But I must say, Flynn, you've done an unbelievable job of propaganda here. I think everyone watching is actually now hoping that Star Sports got out for the week because of the way you've told the story.
Yeah, well, we did get on the week. In the large race, it was in jeopardy for maybe about this much coming up the home straight. We laid Mill Green at 40-1. We laid 10 grand each way Mill Green in the Martin Pipe at 40, and then 11.5 grand each way Leon Cavallo at 28. We were playing 5 places, and where did they finish? 6th and 7th. So absolutely gutting for the punters, but I mean, in terms of turnarounds, when you look at the luck on kind of day 1, 2, and 3, we had none of it at all, really. Even with Envoy Len obviously getting beat, we kind of laid Chantry House. We had none of the luck there, and then on day 4, we just seemed to recoup all of that luck that we didn't have on the first 3 days. We kind of used on day 4. So fantastic result for us. We won small on the week. It didn't look likely for a good chunk of the 3 days of it, and to be honest, most of the last day, but we actually managed to win on the week somehow. So it was a good week all in all. I hope all the punters had a really good time and enjoyed it. It was a really good festival, but to be honest, I just can't wait to get back on track and enjoy it properly now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we have that feeling in the air now. As went for a dip in the sea yesterday, and the water was noticeably warmer than I thought, and it was a really sunny day, and there was a great vibe around the place that people kind of basically just want to get on with their lives, and hopefully that will allow people to come back racing, to come back to football games in small numbers, because I'm not sure how much longer people can go on with this, and I'd love to get back racing. But just in terms of the week as a whole then for the firm, we did a bit of football yesterday, had to give some money back, so I ended up laying Spurs because I think they're an absolute joke at the moment, but Villa couldn't even muster a shot on target. They're that reliant on Jack Grealish. Obviously Leicester then comfortably beaten Man United as well. So how was the week other than Cheltenham for the firm, even though I imagine it pales in comparison?
Yeah, so in terms of football, it's pretty quiet. I think the game we probably need to talk about is the West Ham Arsenal game from yesterday, 3-3. We actually laid a little bit of Arsenal when West Ham went in front by 1-0, I think it was. So Arsenal coming back and drawing wasn't a terrible result for us at all. But it was a great game to watch. And then we've obviously got the internationals this week, so a bit of a break from Premier League. In terms of other stuff that we've got on this week, I don't want to talk about a huge amount from last week other than Cheltenham, because to be honest, there wasn't a huge amount of action, even though we had a good spread of business. In terms of this week, we've also got the Lincoln and Doncaster on Saturday. So a decent flat card, the flat starting to come back. Obviously, we had the Curry yesterday as well. And then we've got some decent golf this week. There's a WGC match play, and that starts on Wednesday, so starts slightly earlier this week, so in 2 days' time, rather than on Thursday, because it's a match play event. It'll be Wednesday through to Sunday. So 5 days of golf this week. We've got in international football matches, and then some flat action from Donny this Saturday.
Flynn, that was fantastic stuff. I think you did a great job going through the week there. It was a long week, 28 races, so much going on. This time next year, surely you'll be back racing.
Fingers crossed. And literally just can't wait to get back. It was very, very sad seeing it on the TV and not being there. It was just it was a completely different experience just seeing every Cheltenham race on the TV for a start. Because the last few years I haven't seen any on the TV and don't watch much of the races when you're actually on the track. When you're kind of sorting the hod out in terms of the money and making sure you've got the suites there at the front of the pitch and all that type of gear. So it was a very, very different experience. I can't wait to get back out there and for the on-course bookmakers out there. I can't wait for everyone to get back to work, really.
Absolutely. And I still have my Star Sports Parker pen and notepad as well, which will probably be used to put in some duds over the course of the flat season that ultimately let me down. But life is good, Flynn, and I can't wait to talk to you next week.
Yep, you too, mate.
All the best, mate. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week.